Hey, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky. Andy, you may remember on Monday we had our first ever cliffhanger episode where our guest, Daman Rangoola, I know, he asked the question about Anthony Davis and his health and whether it can be counted on. And if not, what do you do about it? Daman is going to answer that question next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends. No matter how you get your podcasts, where you get your podcast, always free, never behind a paywall, anywhere you need to find a podcast. It's unlike every network, this Locked On thing that we got going here. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to view the show. And if you do that, if you subscribe there, you generally get the podcast a little earlier than you would for just a straight audio product. We post it there a little faster. Our guest on Monday was so good that he stayed for Tuesday. I was so bowled over for him. I didn't even change clothes. I just sat in the same place for 24 hours until we could start again with Daman Rangoola, a huge favorite on Lakers Twitter and other forms of social media. Daman, welcome back. We stopped on Monday. We were talking about LeBron James and how much you could count on his health. 50 to 50 is 55 games a reasonable expectation, not a hope, but an expectation. And we all kind of agreed on that's probably the top end of expect. Hope is a different question. You then asked the same question about Anthony Davis. What is the difference between the two of them, and why did you ask that question?
Because I think when it comes to expecting when you have LeBron James, the expectation is you have him fresh and ready to go for the playoffs, right? He is at this point, you don't want him chasing MVPs. You don't want him chasing scoring titles. You don't want any of that. You just want him to be on sort of like the Jimmy Butler plan in Miami, right? He'll play whenever he wants to play, like whenever he feels up to it. He'll play at the level, whatever level he needs to be to get himself paced for the playoffs. And Jimmy Butler has looked excellent in the playoffs, despite a very rocky regular season. And I think a player like LeBron, you should expect the same. It goes back to expectation versus hope. My expectation coming into this season specifically with Anthony Davis, and, this is not bashing Anthony Davis. This is more looking at realistically what we have and how to build with what we have and what decisions we have to make with what we have. I expected coming into the season, despite my pessimism about the Russell Westbrook trade, I expected that Anthony Davis was going to, he had a full offseason, right? There was no bubble tax, all that. He had a full offseason to be ready to go. Secondly, he just saw Giannis win MVP, finals MVP. Everybody crowned him the best player in the world, which I believe was fair. But a player like Anthony Davis, who 2 years ago in the bubble, we were talking about Anthony Davis being better than Giannis. So I thought combination of all those things, the competitive juices, the well-rested nature of who he was, I expected him to be a MVP candidate this year. Mm-hmm. At his age, what the Lakers gave up for him, who he is as a talent, I think that is a fair expectation, right? And I thought that he was going to be the engine in the regular season. I thought Russell Westbrook was actually going to be good for him in that regard because Russell Westbrook would feed him in kind of pick and roll heavy situation. LeBron's off the court. Russ and AD can do damage.
Well, they did.
They did. They absolutely did, right?
Careful what you wish for. You should have been more specific.
Yeah.
But what the
damage was too broad a wish, Tom.
Right. Seriously. But the reality of what happened was Anthony Davis came into the regular season not out of shape. He was not out of shape. I don't, and by the way, I don't think he's soft either, right? Like, I don't think those kind of critiques are silly. But he came into this season heavy. His jump shot
by design. It was
by design, right? This was his plan.
Right.
This was his plan. He came into the season heavy. He came into the season still not necessarily wanting to play center. He came into this season without a improved jump shot, right? He's continued to struggle in that regard. And I think what that tells me is I am no longer, and by the way, and he didn't play a full season, right? So all those things combined. He was not the engine of the regular season. He was not the guy to lift the team up. And if we can't expect that, and we can't expect him to be 55 to 60 games, he is not, in my opinion, a 100% guaranteed, can't move him, can't touch him as a second player to LeBron James. I think that we really need to be open to the idea that out of all the possibilities that can happen this summer, one of the considerations should be trading Anthony Davis for the reasons I outlined.
And I mean, in Andy, like the other upside there is depending on what kind of trade you put together, like this might be the best way available to actually field a team with some reasonable depth to it.
I just feel like there are practical considerations here where the last couple seasons we've seen the health risks with both LeBron and AD. LeBron has been injured 3 of the 4 years he's been with the Lakers. Like the idea that he's this cyborg that's just indestructible and all that was legitimately felt for the majority of his career. At the end of the day, everybody's body will start cooperating less. I don't care who you are. I've been growing increasingly concerned, Daman, that a team built around 2 stars, LeBron and AD, that you have concerns about availability for both. That just isn't tenable. It's one thing if you have concerns about LeBron's availability, but you know AD is going to be there. Or you have concerns about AD's availability, but you know LeBron's going to be there. The latter is not as ideal because of where LeBron's at in his career. And, what he's been doing with this type of responsibility and mileage is unprecedented. But maybe you could work around it. When both are big-time question marks, it's seeming like to actually be out there, you have similar problems that the Clippers have had with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, similar issues that the Nets had with KD and Kyrie before Ben Simmons became his own question mark. You can deal with one star that has health and availability concerns. I don't know if you can have your top 2 players set up that way. So in that sense, if you are committed to LeBron moving forward, in some respects, I think that makes more of an argument to look into moving AD, not less.
Yeah, and I think going back to what we talked about in part 1 with the Porzingis trade in Dallas, on paper, that looked like to people, if you read the commentary about that trade, as a downgrade. Like, what is Dallas doing here? But what they got was 2 more dependable pieces, right? And so that's kind of a situation where we can discuss mock trades. And, the problem with trades is things change so fast. I'll just throw one quick example out there to illustrate how fast things can change. If the Nets, their exit press conference, it sounded like they were going to go into the offseason with a little bit more tough love for Kyrie. If the Nets do something
they
with
have
Kyrie,
to ask GM Kyrie Irving about whether that's going to work. Kyrie's responsible for putting the team together, Daman.
Right, that's right. But if they go into this offseason and say, "Hey, Kyrie,"
this based on Kyrie's social media, it doesn't seem like he's expecting more tough love.
yeah, you're right.
His most recent posts do not reek of contrite.
No, they do not.
Easy love is what he's expecting.
Absolutely.
Nice, gentle love.
And so with a player like Kyrie, if the Nets go to him and say, "Hey, Kyrie, we're not going to give you a long-term extension. We want you on more of a year-to-year basis. We just think that based on how this year went, we want to do that."
Month to month isn't an option.
Right. And if the Nets if Kyrie responds with, "Well, screw that, I'm going to retire," right? And if Kevin Durant's like, "Okay, well, I don't want to be here anymore," right? I just illustrated a situation that's not super far-fetched in which Kevin Durant suddenly says, "I want out of here." And now we're talking about Kevin Durant for Anthony Davis. Now, I'm not predicting that. B, I'm not even saying that that's going to happen. But I'm saying that there are situations, and that's an extreme example where a player like Kevin Durant, I think it's an easier conversation. But even in that situation, you could be on the Anthony Davis side and say, "Hey, we actually want to build the future of after LeBron around Anthony Davis, and Kevin Durant and LeBron is going to be a 1 year or 2 year window, and that's it." My response is for the options I illustrated below or initially, I don't want to build around Anthony Davis long term, right?
No.
I've come to that conclusion. And so when I've come to that conclusion, and my window with LeBron is 1 or 2 years, which is what it is. In fact, I would say moving forward, it's a 1-year window with LeBron, and that's all you can expect. I keep coming back to this point of, why is Anthony Davis untouchable? And the answer is a clear no to me.
Well, look, the trade scenario that you're putting out there, Daman, is unrealistic because everybody knows you would dangle Russ first.
Absolutely.
You at least make them say no to Westbrook for Durant.
A Russ Kyrie backcourt. My
Russ,
God.
Kyrie, Ben Simmons.
Oh my God, let's make that happen. Look, you want to talk about 3 guys with different chips on their shoulders who are motivated to win, who are, we talk about a different kind of NBA team, a different kind of squad. I think it could work. In fact, I think the Nets would be foolish to pass.
Steve Nash will quit. He will absolutely quit.
But let's stay on this because what you just said there about building around Anthony Davis is the other part of this issue that I don't think gets enough attention. Quite frankly, we're so focused on next year and the future of LeBron, you do forget that the foundation here is actually supposed to be Davis for the long term. So we'll get to that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Prize Picks. Okay, Laker fans, you've been hearing me talk about Prize Picks for months, and if you have not signed up, you are missing out because this is daily fantasy made easy. You're going to love this app for the NBA, but also just for the mixed sport pick'em options. And okay, here is a no-brainer offer for all of our users. You get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point, like 1 point. Go with Luka. Like, that's a really safe bet right now, but you got to use the code NBA because it's an exclusive offer available for Locked On fans only who use the code NBA. Prize Picks offers the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. They offer more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator, and also they offer superstar players, but bench players that only get a handful of minutes each game. You get all the different options, and then you get into the mixed sport entries. You can go like, say, the over on Luka Doncic, whatever, and the under on Freddie Freeman home runs. Like, keep it weird, keep it interesting, mix it all up. You can use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's really easy. It's safe. They offer fast withdrawals. So again, go to prizepicks.com today. Use the promo code NBA or go to the App Store, download the app. If you're not playing Prize Picks, you honestly don't know what you're missing.
Locked On Lakers also brought to you by Built Bars. Andy, we've been talking about them, and I actually got a box, like a box of 12 of the birthday cake puffs sent to my door. I was not expecting it, and it was excellent. And I was excited about it because, like, imagine for a second you're at a birthday party and you take your hand and you just like dip it into the cake with like the frosting and the cakiness and whatever. And nobody wants you to do that because it's horribly rude. But you can do it at home with
especially Brian during a pandemic. It's really, that's just straight out of pocket. If we're being honest,
it's doubly rude.
They're going to ask you to leave, and with good reason.
Were you wearing a mask at the time? If you haven't tried the puffs, I'm going to let you in on a secret because that's what they do. It's like a chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. Yeah, I mean, you heard me right. You did. A delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate, enrobed in real chocolate even, as our friends at Built like to say. Again, 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, only 9 grams of sugar, and it's a limited time flavor. It's an amazing option. You can go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Again, the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Andy, nothing about, quite frankly, any of the 4, as much as I've enjoyed them, the 4 segments we've done with Daman have made me feel any better about the Lakers at all. And now it has been put back into my head that the Lakers have long-term concerns about AD. I can tell both of you are on board with the idea of trading. I certainly don't have a problem with it. What can you get? Because I feel like if you do try to trade Davis, the problem with doing it now is that you are trading him at the absolute valley of his value. And so what do you get? Because everybody else has the same concerns that the Lakers have.
Well, I mean, first of all, you do have to allow for the possibility that you're trading him at his valley so far. I mean, if he has another season like the one that he just had, really the last 2 where he missed half the season, his trade value can only get lower. Pragmatically and practically speaking, if you are going to have LeBron on this team, it is imperative that he has a supporting cast that is there. And you can make an argument that a supporting cast that does not have anybody as talented at his best as Anthony Davis, but is there for 80 to 90% of the season, will in the long run help LeBron more than Anthony Davis, who is more talented, but they're less. Because the more you tax LeBron through AD's absence, the less you're going to get out of LeBron in the long term. So you could make the argument that even if the value for AD has taken a dip, in terms of trading him,
Sure,
it might not matter, because if he isn't there, you're not getting what you want for LeBron anyway.
that's true. But I mean, Daman, do you think you could get and I worry about, I'm terrible at this game, by the way. How much is somebody going to make?
Well, I came up with some few fake trades for what it's worth. But
okay,
I have one more realistic one than than the Kevin Durant one, so we can maybe trade.
More realistic than Durant?
All right.
Shocking.
This is my intrigued face.
I'm willing to yes and my way through your hypothetical, but sure.
So how about Bradley Beal, Rui Hachimura, and Daniel Gafford?
Ooh. Bradley Beal, though, you end up with the exact same problems as AD in terms of availability.
Yeah, but he's at least a guard where you can hope that he'll be healthier.
And he's from St. Louis.
So
we like that.
Yeah,
I would be very nervous. Plus, also too, you're talking about a newly extended Bradley Beal.
There's no good options.
It's tough. I mean, look, it's very difficult, but I think
where would you guys rank? And Andy, we'll get to your hypotheticals here because I love this game. Where would you put Ben Simmons as a distressed asset when the Sixers made that trade? Because you know what I'm saying, the Nets traded. And where would you put Harden as a distressed asset? Because Harden brought back Simmons, Curry, and picks, plus Andre Drummond. So Harden was a semi-distressed asset.
Right, but
and brought back a lot of stuff.
In the eye of Daryl Morey, though, he was not distressed in the slightest. I mean, Daryl Morey had other options than James Harden. He could have gotten CJ McCollum. He could have traded around to different teams. It was very clear he was holding out specifically for James Harden. And, it was a deal I did not like in the moment. And thus far, I'm looking correct about it.
Yeah, no,
look,
I'd rather be Brooklyn on that end. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And who knows where things are going to go from there. But the point being, though, in some respects, distressed can be in the eye of the beholder.
Right. That's what I'm saying that as a way of saying, hey, there could be more value in Anthony Davis than perhaps I'm giving him credit. But what other things did you put together, Andy?
Okay. So I thought about a few of these just in terms of what could, sounded intriguing to me, if nothing else. Anthony Davis for either Clint Capella and DeAndre Hunter or John Collins and DeAndre Hunter. You give Atlanta a second good scoring option. The Lakers get more depth. They get some more outside shooting. And DeAndre Hunter, you get a young wing who can defend. You get a little bit younger in the process of this. If you go for Clint Capella, you give LeBron a lob threat for days and also, at least something of a lane protector.
Is that enough?
I don't know if it's enough.
It doesn't feel like it worked. I also think just that Capella kind of prototype of player, I feel like we can get that cheaper.
Okay, John Collins, though.
Yeah, John Collins is interesting.
John Collins and DeAndre Hunter. And maybe fill out some edges, but those two together.
Probably you need picks.
You have to get some picks back, I would think. I don't think you can make an Anthony Davis trade that does not at least recover some of the draft picks that you
and that would be partly by design.
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing about this. If you are looking to maximize LeBron in a very tight window, I don't know if you have the luxury of thinking about replenishing what you got for AD. And you also have to look at it as we wanted a title for AD. We got it.
Yeah.
Have we maximized LeBron and AD together? And if the answer you think is yes, but you still want to maximize LeBron more, you may not have the luxury of thinking along that replenishing terms. It's just, do these guys make this team better?
Yeah.
Are we really are we, no disrespect to John Collins and DeAndre Hunter, who are fine NBA players. It is a scathing indictment of where Anthony Davis is right now, that you could float that trade and not have it be kind of absurd on its face.
Here's the thing about
John Collins was halfway out of the door in Atlanta because they didn't think they could make him a useful player.
No, that's not why. They didn't want to pay him. There's a difference.
But pay him enough to for what
but that's not because they didn't think he was useful. I mean, he ultimately ended up getting money anyway. I mean, he has a long-term good deal, but I don't think of it, at least for me, as much a question of scathing indictment of AD or not. You can if you want. I'm just thinking about this in terms of just pure pragmatism of, you need this thing to work. And if you get stuck on the idea of superstar and value and all that stuff, you may end up talking yourself into what doesn't work, but what looks better.
Do you have to, Daman, do you have to get past the sort of the vision and that we all have in our heads of, and we've seen it, we saw it in the bubble, of like what the MVP, because Andy and I agree with you. We both expected the same kind of season that we didn't get out of Anthony Davis in terms of coming in fresh and with a massive chip and something to prove and being an MVP candidate, and he clearly wasn't. Do you have to get that image out of your head when you sort of think about Davis now, while I guess simultaneously trying to put it back into the opposing GM's head,
right,
that you're trying to trade with? Because that vision of transcendent MVP caliber Anthony Davis is not replaced by John Collins and DeAndre Hunter.
You're replacing that high-end possibility for more steadiness, right? That's ultimately what you're doing. Just forget the player names involved. That's a
great way of putting it.
There's a 50% chance you're going to get MVP Anthony Davis. You're trading that for 90% reliable 2 extra, starters. Like
for a team that really badly lacks depth. Like, that's something we saw a lot over the course of the season.
Yep.
The gap between LeBron, AD, Russ at his best, and I don't know, like Malik Monk at his best, and everybody else was staggering. Like
that's amazing.
This team needed more of a middle class.
Oh, they had no middle. They needed. Right. I think I made the point I've been making all season. They needed 7 Will Bartons.
Yeah,
guys who are not all-stars, never going to be an all-star, but like are better than average. The Lakers had, marginal, depending even if you consider Monk to be in the top 70%, top 30%, like, so better than 70% of the league, and I'm not totally sure that's accurate. That means most nights the Lakers had guys that were in the bottom, certainly the bottom half of NBA players, probably at least 2 or 3 or 4 guys playing real minutes that are in the bottom third. And you can't win that way. So if you could fill out and get 5 guys who are, 4 guys who are in that sort of 50 percentile range, 30, like that would make a huge difference. And they don't have access to those players any other way.
That's right.
When we come back, do you want to throw out a few other ones that I had?
Please. Yeah.
And then we can just think about the idea of ultimately, if these options don't sound good to us, does it mean that the Lakers are best off just sticking with what they have?
Or do they sound good to Daryl Morey? That could be the question we need to ask next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, and Major League Baseball. If you're not still sure exactly how baseball's shaking out right now, you're still not quite up on the vibe of the season, go to BetOnline.net's preview sections. They got really good looks at just the best teams, like the ones that they feel strongest about this season, give you a little bit of better idea of just exactly where to put your money, where are the good bets. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today, use your mobile device, learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the games start.
All right. Rockin' Hard Place series continues with Daman Rangoola at Daman R. All right, Andy, what else you got?
Okay. This was one of those if the Suns got eliminated, and that ended up happening. Anthony Davis for a signed and traded DeAndre Ayton.
I would do that if I was Phoenix, just because like if there was ever anything that was going to motivate Anthony Davis to play a season at an MVP level, it would be being traded for DeAndre Ayton, like straight up, like that. We're doing that. So I'd do it if I was Phoenix. I keep kind of coming back to that's not enough. Like
would the Suns
stuff.
add Cameron Johnson?
Okay, maybe. I mean, he's about to get paid too. I mean, that could become complicated, but in theory, okay, let's just throw away the salary
names,
particulars. Yeah. Would you do it for DeAndre Ayton and Cam Johnson?
It's possible. It's possible.
I love Cam Johnson. I really do.
It's
I
possible.
do too.
And so you get two starters who are going to play 82 games. Your
expectation. Are you sure Cam Johnson would start for this team? So that was a joke.
I have a feeling.
I made a joke.
And I trust those guys. Like, despite how today went, I don't think it was because of DeAndre Ayton or Cam Johnson. I think that LeBron would certainly make the most out of. I mean, think about how much LeBron got out of Tristan Thompson, and how much he got out of shooters in general. Cam Johnson is more than a shooter.
My mistake. Cam Johnson may have one more year left at a team option. So if they don't look to do an extension, so maybe he could get tossed into this trade. But DeAndre Ayton, Cam Johnson for Anthony Davis. Because here's the thing. I mean, to your point about AD being a distressed asset, the reason I have not proposed any like superstar for superstar is if you believe that he is a distressed asset, like the idea of forget how it would fit for Utah, but AD for Donovan Mitchell. If you really believe that he is a distressed asset, then I wonder if you could even get somebody that's considered a true superstar. I mean, maybe Anthony Davis for Rudy Gobert, but Daman.
I don't think I will say what I love about. I don't think
how dare you? How dare you?
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Croissant Capella.
If you were trying to come up with a scenario that would just like for once and for all get people to burn the facility down, that would be it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, one more.
But I do like, Andy, that all of your trades are for younger people.
Yes.
They're not superstars, so they're all younger. And I think that's also very important.
Anthony Davis to Cleveland for Jared Allen and a signed and traded Colin Sexton.
Yes.
Because then instead of a sex land backcourt, if you assume LeBron is essentially a point guard, you have a sex jam point guard.
There we go. Hey, there we go. Even better.
Which is actually better, right? I agree.
Way better.
That's the name of the porn version of the Space Jam movies.
I think Sexton's a good player.
Yeah, me too.
He's been hurt.
Yeah.
They fit right in. The filler,
maybe the Lakers get a pick out of it too,
or pick or players, or Cleveland's got a boatload of young players that they could put into this, or picks, or whatever.
But I'm talking about the nucleus of this trade.
But if you were able to go into that and saying we're not taking your stars, we're not asking for Garland or Mobley, and we'll take your other stuff.
Because I don't think they're going to say yes with Garland or Mobley anyway. So that's why I didn't bring this up. I mean, you can obviously ask.
No, but why would you do that? But I think this is fascinating because they got some dudes on this, even like somebody like Chetty Osman,
right,
would have like utility on the Lakers.
Sure.
Like some of these down, like Dean Wade as a stretch five, like. They've got random dudes, or Isaac Okoro is a really good defender. I actually don't think Cleveland would be willing to give him up. Like what I'm getting at, Daman, here is like the filler, the ancillary names on a trade like this for the Lakers would be incredibly important.
Absolutely. And I think there's a couple of things I think in this conversation that it's interesting to step back. This should be more than anything like a wake-up call for everybody around Anthony Davis. Like, hey, the reason this conversation is happening is because there is doubt at this point that what we thought you were is going to actually manifest itself. Secondly, I think that the importance that there is on these sort of, as you said, throw-in kind of players, the fact that that is that important also should be a wake-up call for the organization. Like, hey, this is the position that we're in, that we're actually having these conversations. And I think that this conversation is interesting because of that, right? It's like it's come to this. It's not because it's like, oh, we have this exciting idea. It's like, no, out of all these options, we've come to this kind of a place, and it's more an indictment of, hey, how do we get here?
And it's also, Andy, I think really interesting before we go here, because the model for what is a championship team, I think, has been completely blown up this year. The two teams that everybody picked because of the superstars didn't make the playoffs in the Lakers and were eliminated quickly in the Nets. You have a team like Dallas, which is built around one guy and a bunch of supporting guys who play really well together. Very similar, by the way, to how Dallas won their other title. It should be noted.
I'm rooting for a rematch, by the way, 2011 rematch, Heat Mavs.
I'd watch that. I'd watch that.
But which was a rematch of 2006.
It is.
Golden State has sort of the traditional stars, but kind of still a relatively untraditional construction. But they also have young players who have become very important for them in terms of how they were built. Boston is ascending stars that are maybe closer to there than we thought, but a lot of internal talent that they developed and a lot of other stuff that kind of came together in a really good way. And then Miami is Miami. Like they're like a machine over there.
By the way, too, really quick, with Boston and them getting the Eastern Conference Finals, as much as I know Laker fans despise this, if you're looking for a silver lining of that, it's that maybe it's yet another example that could convince the Lakers not to be afraid of a first-time head coach, because Ime Udoka has done a terrific job with this team. They got off to a brutal start, and whatever he did in terms of writing this thing has clearly worked really well. And the last decade has featured so many first-time head coaches finding immediate success in the case of Steve Kerr, Ty Lue, Nick Nurse, actually winning championships. It could happen this year for Udoka. It's not like being the coach of the Celtics has no pressure attached to it. You know,
Seriously,
I mean,
yeah.
So if you can have a first-time head coach for the Celtics, I think you can do this for the Lakers.
I actually think they're leaning. We don't have enough time to really get deep into the coaching thing, but I think they, at the very least, I don't think they
may have no choice,
right? But other than Stotts and I guess Jackson, if you believe that, like there are a lot of first timers on that list.
Yeah.
So I think they are past that. I think because there is nobody out there, thank God Doc is going back to Philly. And let's just make sure nothing changes. Like hire someone before anybody out there changes their mind.
Listen, I'm nervous until the Lakers make a hire about what happens. I personally, I don't know if you guys have a name real quick. I know we're running out of time, but like I'm hoping for Darvin Ham. Like
that's who I'm really intrigued by.
Yeah.
I think that would
with
be
a
great.
kind of a veteran assistant, maybe like Steve Clifford or Kenny Atkinson or something like that as a lead assistant.
I'm interested if they
Clifford and Ham actually, if memory serves, Brian, didn't Clifford and Ham work together on that Lakers staff?
I believe so.
Yeah. So they know each other.
Laker ties.
If they actually committed to a rebuild, and let's just say they decided to blow it all up, and like you could bring Atkinson in because he's shown that's his deal.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything about Charles Lee. I just know he works for really good people. You know, it's like stuff like that becomes really important. I think, like, who do they work for? Like, you know, and who have they been? What staffs have they been on? And a guy like Darvin Ham has been on nothing but like really successful coaching staffs. And I think I think Darvin would be great. And stay away from Mark Jackson. All right. We barely got into the coaching stuff. There's so much culture stuff that I want to talk about. But we can't stare at each other for another 24 hours. If nothing else, I'm going to have to change shirts at some point and take the kids to school. But let's do this again. I have a feeling it's going to be an interesting off season.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Thanks again for doing this. It was fun.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Locked On Lakers on YouTube, and we will see everybody Wednesday.